Hey guys, welcome back to more Reddit Karen neighbor stories. In this video, my entitled neighbor repeatedly knocked over my trash can, so I got pro-revenge and scared her for life. Let's dive right into the video. I've been wanting to tell this one for a while because it still makes me laugh sometimes on trash days. I live on a quiet street in a regular neighborhood, just a row of small houses with driveways close together. Most of the neighbors are fine, wave when they pass, keep their lawns trimmed and mind their own business, but then there's the one neighbor everybody has. The self-appointed street sheriff. For me, that is Karen. She's the type that thinks she runs the block because she's been here the longest, always complaining about something like kids on bikes, leaves blowing into her yard, people parking too close to her mailbox. She has a permanent scowl that I'm sure is going to eventually give her wrinkles, but up until this story, I never had a reason to talk to her that much. I work during the week and keep things simple. Every Wednesday night, I roll my trash can down to the curb, same spot every time, handle facing out for the truck. Thursday morning, the garbage truck comes through, does its thing, and I come back from work and put it away. The fact I'm even writing out this process is something I never imagined I would do. At least that's how it used to go. One random Thursday, I got home from work and found my trash can tipped over in the street, lid cracked and trash everywhere. I figured maybe it was the wind or the garbage truck clipped it, annoying but whatever. I cleaned it up. Next week, the same thing though, and the week after that, always after pickup, always just mine. Everyone else's cans were upright like nothing happened. It didn't take too long to figure out it was not the wind. I started noticing small dents near the base, like something had been bumping into it. The lid had scuff marks too, right at bumper height. That's when I realized somebody was doing this on purpose. At first I didn't want to believe it was her, but the more it kept happening, the more it added up. Karen was behind it. I just didn't know the why at that point, and I had zero guesses. After the third week in a row, I decided to start paying closer attention. I had a float day, so I used it to stay home that Thursday. I figured I would just keep an eye out after the trash truck came through. Sure enough, about an hour after pickup, I saw her walking her dog. She always does the same route past my house, loops around the cul-de-sac and back. The trash can was sitting right where it should have been, not blocking anything. I went back inside and waited. But then, maybe 10 minutes later, I heard a solid thud. When I looked outside, my trash can was on its side again, halfway in the street. Karen was already heading back towards her house like nothing happened. That was the moment I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. The next week I tried moving it farther up my driveway, out of her path, but the same thing, I came home from work and it was tipped over again. This time I noticed small fresh scratches near the bottom, the kind that looked like they came from metal or something, not a shoe. I crouched down and saw faint black smudges, tire rubber. She was not just knocking it over while walking, she was hitting it with her car. It explained why I didn't see her that other time when I heard the thud. I'm near the end of the block, so she could just turn a corner and then be out of sight. I thought about confronting her right then, but I didn't bother. I mean, there's no reasoning with people like that. She would just deny it, act offended, and probably make things even worse, so I did what any calm, patient person would do. I waited and kept my mouth shut. Every week it happened, same time, same result. And by the way guys, let me know in the comments if your neighbor would be doing this to you, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. Either way, now it was actually getting worse. Before I was coming home to the can tipped over, clearly after the trash had been picked up, but at some point she must have changed her schedule, and now she was knocking it down before the trash could even be collected, leaving a mess all over the place. If she wanted to keep playing games, fine, but eventually I was gonna make sure she lost. I thought about cameras for a minute, like set one up, catch her in the act, show it to the HOA, and maybe post it on the neighborhood group. It would have been satisfying, but I did not want the drama. I did not want to have to sit through a meeting, play detective, or post video evidence and have her deny it until everyone was tired of hearing about it. What I wanted was simple: stop the can from moving. Make it pointless for her to bother. If the can could not be knocked over, the whole stunt had no payoff. That felt cleaner. So I started looking into how people deal with windy areas and how to keep their bins from tipping. There were a bunch of ideas online like bungee cords, heavy rocks in the bottom, straps to the porch. All of that felt temporary or obvious. I wanted something that looked normal but was actually solid. I found a few threads about bolting a bin down to a post or sinking a small concrete base and anchoring the can to it. That gave me the idea to go a step further. Instead of just bolting the can to the ground where someone could still pry it loose, I would make a permanent anchor, something that would look like a regular can at a glance, but it would be basically immovable without heavy equipment. I bought a heavy-duty commercial trash bin, the kind municipalities use, so it would not be an obvious upgrade. Then I bought a piece of steel pipe, a bag of quick-set concrete, and a plate with bolts. One evening, I dug a small hole close to where I put the can. Enough inside my property where it wouldn't be an issue, but close enough to the curb that it could be collected. When the concrete set, I had a buddy that did metal work help weld a short steel sleeve to the top of the pipe, just wide enough for a locking pin that slid through the base of the trash can. That way I could roll the can off and on easily, but once it was locked into place, it was not going anywhere. From the street, it looked like any other bin, but it was sitting in a hidden anchor sunk in concrete. Way better than anything I could have done without some professional secretive help from my friend. I took pictures while I worked, not because I planned on using them, but because it amused me to know the secret. The whole job took an afternoon and a few beers. And no one saw me do it. I rolled the can into place the next trash night like normal, put the handle out for the truck and went back inside. It felt good to know that I didn't have to call anyone, explain anything, or post a video. If she came by and tried to make a mess, she would find out the hard way. Trash day came around and I put the can out like always. Same place, same routine. I left the handle out for the truck and went inside to make coffee, pretending not to care. Not long after, I heard a loud bang, not the kind of bang a can makes when it tips. This was metal on metal. Then a bunch of other noises, gravel scraping, something grinding. I went to the window and saw Karen's car pulled up half on the curb, the front end smashed against the can. She had tried the same move as always, but the can did not move. The front bumper of her car had a big crease, the plastic was split and fluids were dripping. She was outside, hands on her hips, yelling that I'd ruined her car. I stood on my porch and just watched. Neighbors started coming out. People were slow to take sides at first because you know how that goes, neighbor drama. But when they saw the tire marks and the way her car was jammed against a cement base, the mood shifted. It looked like she drove into something that was not gonna budge. Karen was furious and yelling at me while pacing around and pointing her finger in my face. Karen, you're illegally obstructing the road with this dangerous thing. Me, it's not blocking the road, it's totally on my property. Karen, look what it did to my car. Me, yeah, and that happened because you clearly drove right onto my property. You clearly trapped me, you were trying to damage my vehicle on purpose. Someone called a non-emergency police line and an officer showed up. He looked at the scene, at the torn bumper and then at the can. He asked a few questions, wrote stuff down and took pictures. He didn't accuse anyone, but he didn't pretend it was an accident either. The tire marks and the angle of impact made it pretty clear. I found out that her insurance flat out refused to pay for any of the damages. She had driven into private property on purpose, according to the report, and the claim for intentional impact didn't fly the way she wanted. That left her with a damaged car and a big bill. She tried to make a fuss with the HOA and the city, acting like I'd done something illegal. They checked my placement and the property line. The setup was on my property and totally legal. I had not blocked the road or put up anything that violated local rules. After a few rounds of complaints and a trip to the repair shop for estimates, her car was apparently heavily damaged. She stopped showing up to the weekly porch gossip for a while. People still talked about it quietly though. On trash day, which used to be her power move, was quiet after that. I still didn't tell anyone how I had set it up. The reinforcement just sat there. I was not really locking in the can much after that since I doubted Karen would try it again. It did help on windy days though, which was just a bonus. For a while after the crash, things got noticeably quieter. She stopped parking near my driveway. I didn't see her walking her dog past my house anymore either. I guess it reminded her too much of what happened. The next few trash days were the most peaceful ones I'd had in months. My cans stayed upright, nothing dented, nothing moved. Even the garbage truck guys seemed to be in on the joke. One of them waved and gave me a little nod the week after it all happened. Word travels fast in small neighborhoods. A few neighbors came by in the days after the incident just to get the story, but I didn't say much. I just told them that she hit my can and it didn't move. They got the idea. Nobody pressed me for details. Karen, though, was still trying to spin her own version of events. I heard from the folks 2 doors down that she was telling people I tricked her and that I had rigged my trash can to cause damage, but since the police report showed she had hit a stationary property, nobody took her seriously. The HOA did not either, apparently. She tried to get them to make me remove the can and they told her it was not their problem. Her car sat in the driveway for a while after that, the front end patched up badly, mismatched paint, it looked awful. She drove it for a bit, but then one day it was gone and she started using some older sedan instead. The funny thing is though, after that she never bothered anyone anymore. No more notes, no more complaints, no more acting like she ran the street. She even started avoiding eye contact when she saw me, which honestly was perfect. It's amazing how fast a person can go from loud to silent once they learn they are not untouchable. That trash can still sits right there by the curb every week like nothing ever happened. Most people wouldn't guess what's under it, the cement, the boats, the steel, but I know. And I smile a little every time the garbage truck comes by and it's still standing exactly where I left it. After that, everything just went back to normal. No more knocked over trash, no more scuffed lids, no more tire marks on the curb. I didn't realize how much those little weekly annoyances had been bugging me until they actually stopped. Karen kept to herself. She still lives there, but she acts like I don't exist. It works for me. The rest of the neighbors are friendly enough and the street feels peaceful again. That can's been sitting there every Thursday for over a year now and it's never moved an inch again. I even repainted it once so it looked like new again. It's probably overkill, but every time I roll it to the curb I get a little satisfaction out of it. Some people talk big about karma like it's something mystical. Personally though, I think it's just consequences finally catching up. Karen wanted to make a mess and all she did was make an insurance claim. The best part though, trash day is my favorite day of the week now. And the next one is another satisfying story that is titled, "Guy kept cutting in line at the coffee shop, so I made his morning routine miserable." Posted on r/PettyRevenge. There's a coffee shop I go to every morning before work. Small place, usually has a line of 5 to 6 people. There's this one guy who would show up, see the line, and then pretend to just remember that he needed to ask the barista a question. He would walk up to the counter, ask something stupid like, "What size is the medium?" and then conveniently just order while he was already up there. He did this at least 4 times that I witnessed. Nobody ever called him out because, you know, confrontation before coffee is not worth it, so I started playing the same game. Whenever I would see him walk in and start heading towards the counter with his "I have a question" routine, I would quickly step out of line, beat him to it, and then I would ask the most annoying, time-consuming questions possible like, "What's the difference between a latte and a cappuccino again? Do you have oat milk? What about almond and soy? Which one froths better? Can you explain your whole pastry selection?" And then I would say, "Oh, actually, let me get him back in line and think about it," and go back to my spot. He would be stuck standing there looking like an idiot. After about a week of this, he started just waiting in line like a normal person. Problem solved. Have not seen him try to cut since. Either way, the next one is titled, "HOA tried to tow my legally permitted pickup truck 3 times in 1 week." So I live in a condo that used to be my mom's in a pretty busy city. Since she was in before an HOA formed and my name was also on the condo, they could not force me to join this HOA. They hated that I was one of maybe a dozen units that they didn't have control over, but for the most part it never really affected me. Then one day the city finally decided that with all the parking issues they were gonna build lots for most of the buildings in the area that I lived. So instead of street parking, I was gonna be able to pretty reliably park in a spot in front of the building, which for me was great because parking a pickup truck with street parking is a pain. Especially when they have alternate side parking and you need to move from a good spot to probably a crappy one. What they really should have done was just number the spots and give every unit a number so it would be their spot. Instead, it was like the Wild West, but instead of gunfights, it was people arguing about how the spot system should be handled. I get that some things had to be taken into consideration, like handicapped people getting priority near the doors. Now, what ended up being the system was just asking for trouble and was broken from the start. The HOA managed to get some kind of control, but it would only obviously work for those that were members. Now, every person had to have a permit on their car, and to get a permit you had to live in the building. That made perfect sense because the HOA had most of the lot reserved for their members, with the rest of us having a smaller area to park in, usually further away from the building. I was annoyed, but at the end of the day, I had a reliable place to park. The HOA also decided to be extra dumb and have their own stickers they would give to HOA members in addition to the permit, showing they lived in the building even though the permit did the exact same thing. I do electrical work and my hours can honestly be a mess because in addition to working for an actual company, I also do my own contract work after hours. It's not uncommon for me to get home very late or sometimes leave early in the morning. And well, on that particular day, it must have been about 5 AM when I went downstairs and saw that right by my car was a tow truck and some lady screaming around. I figured it was about something else, but no, she was right at my car trying to tell the tow truck driver to take it away. Me, what is going on here? That's my truck. Lady, you're illegally parked here and you need to get this truck out of this spot and make sure he has to pay to get it back. Driver, miss, there's a parking permit on his car for this address. I cannot just tow it away. Lady, but he doesn't have the other pass. Me, who even are you? Just get away from my damn truck. Lady, I'm part of the HOA and you need an HOA pass in order to use this lot. Me, no, I really don't. I need one to park in that designated area. And to be honest, I doubt that is even legal. So unless you want the police involved, just back off, lady. I was able to get in my truck and go to work, pushing the crazy lady out of my mind. She was persistent as hell though, because only 2 days later I had my window open and I heard a commotion. I faced the lot and saw a different tow truck and her voice again. I ran down to once again defend my truck that was legally there. I guess she assumed a different company would do it this time, but they also noticed that I had a legal permit and I explained it to them. This time I sent an email to the HOA president telling him about the lady trying to get my truck towed just because I'm not in the HOA. Just a funny side note, I was not the only person parked there with just a normal permit. But I was the only person driving a Ford pickup instead of a conventionally nice car. So my guess was she just hated my truck and wanted to make up some reason to get rid of it. However, that week was not over yet. This time, I swear she must have been stalking me because I was asleep and dead to the world when she called a third tow truck to try and get my car taken away. This one did not look at the permit or did not understand because they did take my car away. I sent off another email to the HOA president and then called the police. I told them this was the third time in a week that she had tried to get my truck towed and that I was perfectly and legally parked. They agreed that the tow was illegal since I lived in the building and that the lady had to pay and get my truck back. She argued more and finally the HOA president appeared. I assumed he would try and solve the problem, but instead he started defending and lying that the parking lot is only for HOA members and directed him to show the cars with the secondary permits. Turned out that this crazy lady was his wife. A report was filed and they had to get me back my truck, but I was more concerned that she would keep doing this. The officer told her not to do it again and I had a report now against her. I refused to play the game I knew all too well of collecting reports and dealing with the stress. I wanted to do something fast and drastic. I told the officer that was there about the other permits and signs being put up, that the HOA did it themselves, and asked right in front of them how I would go about getting it inspected to see if they had legitimate claim to those spots. I was given a number and they were fuming at me. Even the officer admitted that he never heard of the HOA having reserved spots, which, by the way, the president and I guess his wife had a couple spots right in front of the building just for them. It was way too convenient to be actually allowed, and when I called and got somebody down to check it out, it turned out that I was right and the HOA was in huge trouble. Permits are things that need to be approved and regulated by the government. Their fake ones were not just useless, they were illegal because of the distribution. Also, the illegal putting up of signs in a parking lot was another strike against them. I was just watching them fall apart and having a fantastic time while doing it. By the time they were done being given fines, they owed a ton of money that they did not have. Plus, they were gonna need to go to court because of the severity of their illegal activity. It turns out that if HOA members gave more money, they would magically be given better spots too. They might not have had the money, but they did have some assets. You might be wondering at this point where the actual hell was the owner of the building, or the building manager, or anybody when he was doing all of this. The answer was that this guy not only ran the HOA but also owned the building. He was giving himself unchecked power and was now getting screwed because of it. I know that he had to sell the building because he stopped living there, and I met another guy who was now the owner. I never really saw him because I think he just owns a bunch of big buildings. Even with nothing to say about him, he is way better than the other guy though. And now I can park in peace. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Just following instructions. It was a sunny Tuesday in June when the whole ordeal began. I am a field technician at an archaeological consulting firm, and we had been hired for a massive highway expansion project that would keep us busy for years. Our normal routine involved surveying sites, digging test pits, collecting artifacts, and filling out endless paperwork documenting every little detail. With the head of the artifact processing department out on parental leave, a recent graduate named Emily had been brought in as a temporary replacement. Emily was determined to make a strong impression, so our company would extend her contract. She scheduled site visits to introduce herself and go over any new protocols. Emily's visit to our site happened to coincide with an unfavorable weather forecast showing heavy rain for the rest of the week. We rely on hand tools and heavy machinery, so downpours make our job far more difficult and hazardous. The meeting was held during our lunch break, and my colleagues were not in the best of moods given the impending storms. Our site supervisor, John, was only half listening as he tried to plan how we would squeeze 3 days of work into the next half day before the rains hit. Emily droned on about inadequate labeling, artifacts caked in mud, and our tendency to write context notes directly on the artifact bags. Then she unveiled her big idea: we should start using flimsy plastic trays to neatly arrange artifacts beside each excavation unit. Those would blow away or break in no time, Bob scoffed. How are we supposed to carry toolboxes, shovels, cameras, and those stupid trays out to the site? Emily dismissively replied, if you need them, you will find a way. John finally tuned back in just as Bob retorted, well, we don't need them, so we won't bother. Emily was incensed and the topic shifted to artifact collection protocols. Our scopes of work always outline which materials should be recovered and which can be discarded on site at the supervisor's discretion. For some reason though, Emily brought this up, perhaps seeking clarification. She went ballistic when the subject of discarding any artifacts came up. You're not experts, she shouted. It's not your place to determine what's significant. I'll have you all fired for theft if I catch you discarding a single item. John had to step in and bring the unproductive meeting to an abrupt end as Emily stormed off to berate the next crew. When I returned on Monday, my colleagues filled me in on Emily's unhinged rant and the surprising new marching orders. She says we are not qualified to judge what is archaeologically relevant? Fine, no problem. From then on, we diligently bagged every single piece of modern debris that emerged from our excavations. Candy wrappers, broken glass, beer cans, you name it. By week's end, we had accumulated numerous large trash bags full of artifacts to send to the lab. Emily was too proud to admit her grave mistake and rescind the policy. And to lighten the processing burden, the decision was made to ship everything directly to headquarters for analysis, circumventing our local office. About a month later, Joan's phone rang. It was Emily's boss, Mr. Thompson. John, are you guys a bunch of idiots over there? He growled. Why am I getting bags of literal garbage? John calmly recounted Emily's disastrous visit and pronouncement that only trained specialists could determine an artifact's significance. There was a long pause before Thompson responded, Got it. Tell your crews to use their best professional judgment again. I will straighten Emily out. With a sigh of relief, we went back to business as usual. Emily reserved a stern rebuke about respecting field technicians' expertise and years of hard-won experience. While she avoided being fired, her responsibilities were drastically scaled back. We cheered when the regular artifact lab supervisor returned from leave a few months later. In retrospect, Emily's arrogant overreach turned out to be a blessing. It reminded management that the folks getting dirt under their nails day in and day out, literally, know a thing or two about identifying artifacts. All is well that ends well, I suppose. And the next one is another petty revenge story that is titled, I gave my friend's boyfriend her phone number when he hit on me at a club. So years before everyone had a cell phone, I was at a club. I noticed my friend's boyfriend from numerous photos, and I knew that he cheated on her. She caught him once and she forgave him. I cannot stand this guy even though I had never met him in person until now. So he notices me and starts flirting with me. I gave him a fake name and pretended to flirt back a little bit. He ultimately asked me for my phone number. I took a napkin, that's how we did it in the old days, and wrote my fake name and his real girlfriend's phone number on a napkin. I guess he was tipsy because he didn't recognize the phone number. Later that night he called and asked for Jill, not my friend's name. She shared the story with me and I didn't fess up in the moment. She broke up with him soon after that. A few months later, she met the most amazing man who she ended up marrying. I broke the news to her then, she was grateful and actually thought it was hilarious. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.